Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Intimacy Podcast with your hosts, Nick and Amy. And we're so excited to have Jesse Robertson back on with us. If the name rings a bell, you've probably seen a lot of his social media videos. We had him on about 6 or 7 months ago as well too to discuss such an important topic. Jesse focuses mostly on perimenopause and menopause and dealing with that in relationships. And we get so many emails and messages of couples that are going through that. Our marriage is one of those that's currently going through that as well. And so, welcome back on the podcast. Thank you so much again for joining us on this so important topic that's never talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to be back. It's great to see you guys again. Feels like it was yesterday, and it's awesome to be back with you. I'm excited to talk about everything that's been going on.
Let's just start with saying how lucky is your wife that you're diving into this and you're probably like the only man on the planet that actually gives a crap about perimenopause and menopause. Literally.
Well, yeah, and
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 I'm not
and
saying that jokingly. I'm like, are
no,
you?
I
I don't
know.
know
Yeah,
anyone else.
yeah. Well, it's definitely helped us. And I can tell you that for sure. It is something that she and I have been through marriage counseling. This is the type of thing where we've seen this come between us. We've also seen the other side of it. I think everything that I learn is something that I don't actually overtly use, right? Like as far as I don't necessarily telegraph that I'm using it, right? So things that I've learned, I just sort of change my behaviors, if that makes sense. I don't say, okay, I'm going to use, step three, and
Yeah.
I change my behaviors, I change my perspectives. I think I'm just a different man. I think I'm a different husband. It for me, the way in which this all ends up working isn't that you end up sort of overtly and sort of stoically do these things. I think it's more of they become who you are. They become how you behave, how you interact, how you talk, how you think. It for me, this has become bigger than actually just perimenopause and menopause. It's become defining yourself as a man. It's become defining yourself as a partner. And that's the part that I find to be really exciting.
I like what you just said before we get to the video real quick, that you actually went to counseling because you were struggling with this. And I think that offers a lot of credibility because you've seen the side of it to where you didn't understand it and you didn't understand what was going on, and obviously you've done a lot of research and studying, and now you've become a better husband because of it. And Amy and I are constantly talking about that in every single
Mhm.
podcast episode, whether it's I shouldn't say whether it's this because we haven't talked about it very often, but if all the other things with marriage is right, doing exactly what you've
Mhm.
done with couples that are struggling with it, and then coming out on the other side and saying, yeah, you can have a good relationship, a good marriage, even if you've, been at rock bottom or you've been struggling with this or had to go to marriage counseling, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I love that because I think people are going to appreciate that, yeah, this isn't just some guy just sharing these things. He's actually been where we've been and struggled with what we're struggling, and he's come out on top.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just marriage, counseling, and we can get into this, later, but I've personally been in therapy for 8 years, and my therapist actually roughly 3 months ago or something like that, we started talking about this channel. In fact, to be honest, I hadn't, of all the things you tell your therapist, the one thing I didn't tell my therapist was that I was doing this channel. And so um, she knows everything else
I've thought
about me.
about that before.
Uh,
Like, I went to therapy. Like, they're like, what do you do for a living? You're like, oh, I help married. No.
yeah, I mean,
Right?
I guess I had too many other things to talk about at the time. So but one day a few months ago, I told my therapist, I'm like, grab your phone, take a look at something. and
He's
um
like,
and
dang,
you know
you're
what was
famous.
well, what was cool is I wasn't really sure how she was going to react. And I actually thought that her reaction was going to be like, how could you not tell me, right? Her reaction, she actually got emotional,
Oh,
and her reaction was literally without even having a conversation about it. Her reaction was, the man I met 8 years ago would never have been able to do this.
wow.
And I thought that that was really powerful. She just, without, I mean, missing a beat, she just looked at, she didn't even like, study the videos for, a week and then come back and talk to me. Just right off the bat, she goes, there's no way you could have done this if you hadn't done the work that you've done on yourself. So I actually use a lot of that in the way in which I communicate and in the way in which I sort of try to translate, what is going on in menopause for women to husbands who want to understand it, but they aren't hearing it, or they can't really get their heads around it. And so I thought it was interesting. Actually, somebody coined this for me. It wasn't my idea, but they go, you're not really a menopause educator. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess not. Like, I don't have a formal education. They go, no. You're a menopause translator. And I
I
was
love
like,
that.
oh,
Great.
I
That's
was
so
like, okay,
good. So
Yeah.
I'll
good.
take that.
I love that. What I love about what you're doing and what you were saying is that this, like, our audience wants to have better emotional connection and intimacy, better sexual intimacy. And this, understanding your wife, just trying to learn what she's going through, that builds emotional intimacy. That,
Yep.
men, is what emotional intimacy is. And it starts, like we always say in every episode that we do, it starts with caring. And there was
Yep.
a day that you were just like, I'm going to start caring about what she's going through, right?
Yeah.
She's suffering. It's making me suffer. We're all suffering. I'm going to start caring about it, and we're going to make it through this. And that is
Yep.
a beautiful thing that every marriage could use during this stage. So we're
Love
gonna
it.
we're gonna start because you did a really good video. It was called "Is Intimacy Lost in Menopause?" And I just, like, I don't even know if you could repeat it this perfect, so I'm just gonna play your video so you don't have to, and then you can dive into it. We'll break it apart because you say so many good things in it. So everyone listening, just, this is going to be a video that he sent out.
Intimacy isn't actually lost in menopause. You're just literally not looking in the right place. And in part, I do mean her vagina, because her sex drive is actually not down there. So if you want to get intimacy back, stop looking there. It is a feeling. It is a mentality. It is a feeling of relaxed, being cared for, being loved. This is what she needs to feel intimate. And all of that is getting wrecked in menopause. Before we can talk about what to do about this, we got to understand why this is happening. She's losing 3 key hormones: estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. The reason why you need to know that is that estrogen is a natural lubricant in the body, which means sex can be painful. Testosterone, while she has less than you, is hugely impactful to her libido, so her sex drive is actually going down. And then progesterone is a calming hormone, so she's just going to feel more stress and more overwhelmed by things that really she didn't used to. The biggest issue you're going to have with intimacy in menopause is just not accepting the reality that you're in. You have to understand that she is losing these hormones. It is not an excuse. It is not something that she made up. She's not trying to get out of anything, and it's wreaking havoc on her body physically and mentally. And if you can recognize that, you can appreciate how stressed and how overwhelmed and how difficult this is, and then you can start to do the things that can help her feel more relaxed. You can listen to her. You can believe her. You can do the things around the house. You can do the grocery shopping. You can do the driving. You can help out with the kids. You can do all the things that you know need to be done that can help her feel like she doesn't have to carry all of that. And if she doesn't have to carry all of that on top of all of these symptoms, she can not only start to feel more loved and cared for, but she can start to feel more relaxed. And that's where she needs to get to be intimate with you. Focus on that, and you can get your intimacy back in menopause, physically and mentally. And if
Okay, we're going to stop there. Perfectly said. Perfectly said. And I bet Nick was listening and he was like, wow, I didn't know all 3 of those hormones were tanking. I don't even know what those hormones are. Right? Am I right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And I really thought about actually diving in and learning about what she's going through, because I hear this word, but I haven't actually really cared. And it's not that Nick doesn't care, but I think a lot of men are clueless with this word and they don't stop. A lot of men probably are guilty of, swiping past seeing the word and not really caring about it. And that's what's so great, is the men that want a great intimate life, to want to keep intimacy in the marriage and want to have that emotional connection with their wife so they can make it through this stage. You've got to stop and start caring about this. So anyways, hats off for you for changing the world. Right?
Well, this is just me talking about me. So there's a lot to unpack there. I suppose one side of it is just the basic education of what is actually happening, like the biology, right? And we can talk about that. The other side of it for me is something that I didn't really appreciate or understand, which was the the value and the necessity that your wife has of being loved, seen, cared for, heard, valued, relaxed, right? All these things, and nothing that I'm saying, I'm sure to the vast majority of men sounds earth shattering. But if you look in the mirror, those men who are listening, how often are you really actually doing that? Right. So there's a difference between, intention and impact. There's a difference between knowing these things and actually doing them. And it's the little stuff, right? Like, it just, for me, it kind of started with trying not to leave the dishes all over the kitchen, because I thought, well, she'll probably just get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or, do you need me to take the kids to practice tonight? Right. Or, there's a meeting at the school. Like, I can handle that. It was little stuff. Right. And you'd think that this stuff, that like these examples that I'm using aren't related to intimacy, but they actually are. Right. Like, it sort of begins, the intimacy actually begins far outside of the bedroom.
Oh yeah.
That's all we talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all we talk.
Yeah.
Let me stop you
100%.
really quick right there, because I'm a wife and I'm mid-40s, and weird things are happening, and I'm like, what's happening? Like, getting in a car, like, and I've heard a lot of, now that like there's these videos like all over the place now, it's like, oh my gosh, like someone relates to me, and then all of a sudden your feed is full of all these like symptoms. It's like driving in a car gives me anxiety. Like, these are things that women throw out. Like, running errands nowadays exhausts us. This lack of sleeping, like, we're literally, I used to be a night owl and I can't even turn on a movie anymore. Like, what happened? He's like, you're so boring now. Like stuff like that. Libido gone. Didn't want it to. Like, you talk about that. Like, a man's like, poor me, my wife's libido. What about us that we're like actually going through this stuff? We're suffering more than you are. Like, just, I have friends that are older than me are like, oh, you're just beginning. Wait till you have all the bigger symptoms and the night sweats and the shoulder stuff and the pains and the, like, it's just, so these women, any woman that's listening is just like, oh my gosh, like, I see these videos and I'm just like, someone's listening to me, and these things are real. And this is what I want to talk about, is that we've been like, especially if you're raising many kids and you're busy or you're working, and then all of a sudden your body's like I can't handle this anymore. And these things feel overwhelming to me. But we're used to being Wonder Women and just taking on everything. And the husbands don't see like what's happening. And it's hard to explain to them, like, I can't be Wonder Woman anymore. Like, the things that you're talking about to help her are really big relief. So I would love to just talk, if you could share, like, yes, the symptoms, what her body's doing. Let's talk the biology a little bit. And then let's dive into like why those little things, when a husband takes those over, why that really does make a big impact. Because it seems kind of silly that women say these things are so big, but they don't sound very big when you've been doing it your whole marriage, right?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. A lot to talk about there.
We have a lot to talk about. But
There's a lot
we're going through this, so I'm like, there's a lot to talk about.
That's the rest of the pod. No. Yeah, I guess in short, okay, so let's just talk through a little bit of biology for the husbands that are listening, for everybody who's listening. So you've got these three hormones that I talked about, right? And estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. Estrogen is what is often talked about because there's estrogen receptors all over her body, brain, body, the whole thing. And so that's why it's like, well, when estrogen drops, it affects the area of the brain for temperature regulation. True. When estrogen drops, cortisol spikes, so anxiety increases, true. When estrogen drops, lubrication in the body decreases, moisture in the skin decreases. It affects neurotransmitters in the ears, so you get itchy ear canals. It affects saliva production, so you get burning mouth syndrome, and you can actually have gum loss and literally tooth loss because of loss of estrogen. It's a natural lubricant in the body, so that makes sex actually painful. It was responsible for strengthening the vaginal walls, so also they get brittle and painful. When nocturia can happen, which means she has to get up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom 4 or 5 different times because strength in the bladder walls has gone down. Frozen shoulder and frozen hips start to happen because that natural lubricant is affecting the joints, right? And so those get locked up. You can kind of go on with estrogen, but when estrogen and testosterone, so testosterone, she's got less than you, but it has an outsized impact on her libido. So when estrogen and testosterone go down, her libido goes down. So now you have this combination of, and what's important about that is it's a biological change. It's not an emotional one. It's like a switch flipped in her head and she doesn't know why. She doesn't know what's going on. It's just off, right? And so it's not like she woke up one day and chose to not, want to have sex, or chose to not be intimate, or chose to even have mood swings, right? But there's more to it, because when estrogen drops, it affects the levels of serotonin in her brain, which are feel-good chemicals. It affects oxytocin, which is that kind of like, if you help me, I have that feeling like I want to help you. Somebody holds the door for you, so you hold the door for them. That's oxytocin. Leadership is oxytocin, feels good to help others, that kind of thing. Well, you can see how that connection would happen in intimacy, right? We're doing this for each other. So that chemical drops. Dopamine drops, which is motivation and her reward. So that sense of like, well, if I have sex, I'm going to feel good. That's dopamine. That's not there anymore, right? The motivation to even just the energy to do it, that's gone down. Right. So it's like, which one of these? Oh, and by the way, we haven't even gotten to progesterone. So let's get to that real quick. And progesterone is a calming hormone. So progesterone has to do with her ability to manage stress and her ability to handle all of these different things. And on top of all of that, you have this emotional strain. You have things like that she's fighting, like, beyond just the anxiety, beyond the depression, she's fighting guilt. She's fighting shame. She doesn't recognize herself anymore physically or mentally. So she doesn't even know who she is. That doesn't make her feel attractive. And when she doesn't feel attractive, she doesn't feel like wanting to have sex. Yeah. When she, when she feels the shame of recognizing the fact that this is a process of aging. This is a process of losing beauty. Doesn't have to be. And it doesn't, and it's not even to say that it is. It's just, that's how it feels, right? There is a truth that this is the actual process of losing fertility. And so when that fertility is gone, for many women, that's a hallmark of what it meant to be a woman, right? Now that's gone. This is without even talking about the fact that the medical system really just decided that they weren't going to focus on women past fertility. So they've got that going for them. And the stress of, 6 to 7 doctors on average that women, have to see. So all of this then contributes to the overwhelm and the mental load. And the shame comes from recognizing that all of a sudden she can't be the woman who she's always seen herself to be. She's seeing productivity get affected at work. She's seeing decision-making get affected at work. She's losing sleep, right? One of the first things that happens in perimenopause is fatigue and sleep loss. That's happening because estrogen, going back to that, was also a natural melatonin producer. Progesterone was helping her get into deep, sleep and actually stay there. And the cortisol spiking that's taking place before, if it's not the hot flashes that are keeping her up at night, is causing anxiety, which is creating racing thoughts. So when she does wake up, she can't go back to sleep, right? So all of this.
It's so bad.
So this, yeah. So, and look, every woman's journey is different, and not every woman experiences all of these things or all of the same things, right? But these are all of the things, right? And many more that we haven't talked about. But the point is, going back to what I learned and why this kind of was about a little bit of my own journey, is I never really appreciated what it took for my wife to want to be intimate. Right? Like I guess I just never really differentiated between us when it came. I just figured she wanted it for the same reasons I did, or in the same ways that I did. And, when you're in your 20s, you kind of can't tell the difference. Everybody's like, yeah, sounds good. right? And then, you've got kids and it's nap time and it's like, okay, well, I'm still 29, right? So let's go. But, you get into your mid 40s and you can't do the thing where it's like, hey, we got 5 minutes. It just doesn't work that way. And what I started to appreciate was more work needs to be done, not only at the point of wanting to be intimate, right? Like, foreplay and all the things that you guys have talked about. And so, even some of your more recent videos, but it's also like, what have you been doing I mean, if at a minimum, the hours leading up to that point, if not the days, right? Like, what have you been doing to make her think to herself, wow, I'm feeling taken care of. I'm feeling relaxed. I'm feeling like the fact that I can't take care of everyone and everything around me anymore, or I don't want to, or the fact that I was told my entire life that the definition of the strength of me as a woman is how much discomfort I can push through. And the fact that I can't do that anymore doesn't seem to be affecting him, and he still loves me and he still wants to take care of me, and he's now even going further to do that while I'm going through this. You make her feel like that, then the connection that's required for intimacy then becomes possible. But like, I look at it from the standpoint now in menopause, where it's like, if she doesn't want to be intimate with you, you screwed up a long time ago. Like, meaning hours or days, right? Like, like you weren't doing something a lot sooner than that moment where you wanted to be intimate that is causing her to not want to be intimate with you. Like, so it's almost like, as a man, walk yourself through the last 24 hours, right? And what have you done in that last 24 hours that would lead you to believe that you have shown her that you hear her, you understand her, you're listening to her, you're helping her feel relaxed, such that she would want to be intimate with you and find that connection. And that, to me, is sort of the bigger, picture. Because I think the last thing I'll say here is, like, guys have to remember the context in which this is all happening. It's not happening in a vacuum. It's not only happening at home. It's happening everywhere, right? It goes with her to work. It's in public places. She doesn't know when that hot flash is going to happen. She doesn't know if she's going to forget words mid-sentence in the middle of a presentation. She's got all of that to worry about, right? While also carrying, largely the mental load of everything else, aging parents, raising kids, peaking at her career, by definition, by salary in the United States, mid 40s, like 4 years after the average age in which women start getting all these symptoms. So it's all through the height of her responsibility at work. It's bigger than the symptoms itself. And I think when guys can really wrap their heads around this, it changes their perspective. It changes how they see their role. It changes how they communicate, how they prioritize their time and the things that they do or don't do, with their wife. And all of that gets thrown into a pot and stirred up. And if the recipe was right, then intimacy is possible. And that's what it feels like for me.
I'm speechless.
That doesn't happen very often.
I am completely speechless. Yeah, I amen to everything you just said. I would like to know the moment you realized, I want to learn about what my wife is going through. Like, what was that?
Sure.
Was there an exact moment? Was it a breaking moment? Was it a life circumstance? Was it just all of a sudden you're just crashing out marriage-wise and you're like, I have got to pay attention to this? Like, what happened in your marriage? Because I think a lot of people are suffering. You said in one of your videos, like, this is the biggest stage of divorce. What did you say, 60% or something?
60, yeah. A study out of the UK was done saying that 60% of divorces were happening in menopause years, and then 73% of the women initiating those divorces said that menopause was one of the causes of their divorce.
So here you have, marriage is already hard. We already have the sexual gap, emotional intimacy gap that we always talk about on our podcast, right? Like, where withholding on each side. I don't have the emotional, so I don't want the sexual. I'm not getting the sexual, so I'm withholding the emotional. You take all that happens all the years and stages of marriage. You throw on perimenopause where a wife's having mood swings and anxiety and depression and all these things, and her libido's gone, and the husband's like, what, now you need more from me? And now I have to step it up even more, and now you're ornery, and I don't understand any of this, and this sucks for me, and it sucks for you. And here's this big stage, right? So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So yeah, what was it like for you? What was your moment?
So what's interesting is I feel like I came into my understanding of all of this after um after some of the damage had been done from not understanding it, right? Like I didn't get this as the precursor, right? Like I didn't get it in time. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't, so I had to I've used this as a way to try to undo some of my own behaviors and some of the friction that would come into my marriage and relationship. And so I've kind of I got into understanding menopause by accident. Right. We talked about this on our last episode where, I was just listening to a podcast that had Dr. Mary Claire Haver on it. And just for whatever reason, I just didn't change the channel. And that kind of changed my life. And I think in that podcast, just started to I got enough of a taste or I guess enough of knowledge okay, there may be something more to all of this than what realized was going on. And this could be worth looking into. This could be worth trying to understand, right? Like I just got enough. And to be honest with you, that's kind of the purpose of my channel. It's to just give you enough, right? Enough to make you curious, enough to make you maybe doubt your own thoughts, right? Enough to make you question how you're reacting to her mood swings or how you're reacting to the lack of intimacy. If I can give you enough, you might just go look a little further. And then, the hope is that it grabs you the way that it did me, right? And then, and you don't have to go make a life out of it, but you don't have to actually learn quite that much to know enough, right? Like you don't have to be an expert. But what came out of that for me, and what I think that you mentioned, Amy, which is interesting, is there is this thought that this trap, I would call it, that men can get into where they start to think, oh, this sounds like a lot of work. When I would look at that through two lenses. One is that work always existed. It's just she was doing it.
Right.
And number two, so it's not new work.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't shared work. And so then it comes down to like, okay, how much work is it really, right? For you to start getting involved with some of these things. And you don't need to be, it's more of an evolution than a revolution. You don't need to wake up one day and put on your cape and be like, here I go, right? Just, before you go to bed, if there's dishes in the kitchen, do them, right? If there's laundry, do it, cook, pick up stuff at the store. I started like there was little things I would do that I used to never do. I would go to Target for myself because there was something I needed. Maybe I need to pick up a prescription. I don't know what, right?
Yeah.
And I just started texting her and going like, "Hey, I'm at Target. Is there anything you need?" Like it's just little stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can grab while I'm there the 5 things that she was thinking about for dinner or for whatever, right? Or maybe she's out of shampoo, could be anything. That's just one less thing that she has to now think about. And so it doesn't have to be these magnanimous, anniversary style acts of, generosity and service,
Right.
It's like, no, just be a partner.
Yeah.
And everywhere you look, this is sort of like one of those things where, you buy a car and then all of a sudden you notice that the car you just bought is everywhere. Well, it was always everywhere. You just never noticed. This is the same thing. Like these opportunities are all around you and they don't have to be big, And if you start doing some of those types of things, they actually just become natural. And then your relationship becomes more natural because of it. Like and that's what fed into a better connection. And that's why I kind of say, look, intimacy isn't lost in menopause, you're looking in the wrong place, because men are looking at her physically. Like, where is it in you? Where did I lose it? That's not where you lost it. You lost it out there somewhere, and you need to go out and work on all of that stuff. And then it will be there. And there are, that said, there are actual, real, true, physical in her body things that are going on that do make it harder. And that also has to be recognized. But that can be dealt with by talking about it.
Yeah.
And that's the key. Communications where
I
this
was
really,
just literally
Yeah,
when you started saying that.
that's exactly what I was going to say. And I love, you're making so many good points. And hopefully the things you're talking about, like texting your wife or calling your wife saying, hey, I'm at Target, what do you need? Or doing the dishes. Hopefully those things don't get stepped up and being done because you recognize your wife is going through. Hopefully those are just things you do because you should be doing, right? But having said that, I feel like a lot of men, like, you're going through life and then this hits your wife, kind of like it did in our relationship, and she doesn't really know what's hit her, right? All we know is the relationship starts changing and
He starts changing.
yeah,
He doesn't.
yeah, maybe she's not interested anymore. And I think a lot of men start taking that as like, oh my heck, like she doesn't love me, or she's rejecting me more often. What have I done? And you're exactly right. If you don't have that communication, I mean, we hear all the time from men that the couple's not talking about it and they start taking it as rejection. Like, oh, I don't know what I did, but all of a sudden she's acting differently and she's more distant and she doesn't want to talk about things and she's not interested in being intimate and she's snapping at me more often and all these things you're explaining. But for most men, they don't know why this is happening. And I mean, don't you agree?
I want to add to that. I love that you started to talk about communication, because I just wanted to say, while you were saying all that stuff, wives, you have a responsibility to talk to your husband about what you're going through and not hiding it. Hiding it and still acting like Superwoman and then just crashing out because you don't feel like you have help or you don't have support and teamwork in your marriage. The women and the men in this have to take responsibility. You have to tell your husband, I'm anxious, I have anxiety now, I have depression now, I can't do these tasks I used to be able to do. I'm sorry that I can't be Superwoman anymore, but I really need you to step it up here, 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 and try really hard to maintain the mood, like not snapping and just trying to communicate nicely about it. And I know that could be really, really hard, but for most husbands, I truly believe that they're loyal, loving, good men that just want to have a good marriage. I just think they're maybe oblivious, don't know what's going on, aren't being told what's going on.
Exactly.
And I love that we're talking about this, because I think most men are really good guys, that they want to help out. They want to be good team players. They want their wife to want to be intimate. That comes down to communication always. But it's hard for your wife to want to communicate when she is having the mood, she's having the anxiety, she's having the depression, her body's changing. I think the tip for the wives that I would give is, please just talk to him and try and share. And husbands, you gotta listen, you gotta care, and you gotta try and be patient, because she's going through crap you're not going through times like 10. You're just seeing the crap that's coming from it, but what she's going, like, you just gotta try and understand each other.
Well, and I know that most of the men and women out there are thinking, well, just ask him what he did, right? So you explained that you obviously learned about this and now things are a lot better. So maybe I'll ask the question directly. What did you do in your relationship that you felt like, and you've kind of already maybe said that a little bit of stepping it up or texting your wife, but what did you start doing to see a change, and how has that change been? How have you seen that change?
So one thing I learned in marriage counseling that I thought was interesting, that I've shared with some men through DMs, and they've actually written back and go like, "Dude, that worked," And I'm like, "Yeah, I paid a lot of money for that tip." So but
So you're getting it for free.
Yeah,
Here
I
on
was
the
just like,
Ultimate Intimacy
you can
Podcast.
PayPal me for that, but
Yeah, right?
No, it's the simplest thing. It was basically, okay, if you've gotten to a point, let's say around, intimacy, which is pretty much the lead thing that men seem to struggle with, around menopause with their wife, if you've gotten to a point where communication has broken down, right? Like we're already at the point where this is clearly contentious. You can hardly get a word out to each other before it turns into something, and then you're not talking about it. What you really need is some way to reset. It's almost like pull the plug out of the wall, wait 10 seconds, but you need some, version of that. And what the therapist shared was write a letter. And what I thought was interesting about that was the reason why it works. And the reason why it works is because you're at a point now where you're not hearing each other. And even though you're not hearing each other, it's actually more than that, because you're not, she in particular may not have the words to describe, and likely doesn't. Because she doesn't have doctors who are trained on this, so she's not getting the answers from them, right? So and like I said, this is like a switch that flips. So it's not an emotional change, it's a biological one. So she's thinking to herself, I don't know what just happened to me. I just don't feel like being intimate anymore, And so she can't explain, certainly not in a way that would be satisfactory to, her husband, right? To justify why this is going on. But she probably could, at least in her best way, in her own words, if she had the time to really think about and write down kind of uninterrupted, like, what is going on, right? What am I feeling? How is this making me feel? And then how is it making me feel when you blame me for this or judge me for this? And not in a way where you're accusing the other person or attacking them or telling them what they're doing wrong, but just share how you feel, right? Like feelings are hard to argue with. Like Nick, if I go, well, I feel like this, you'd be like, no, you don't. I'd be like, what do you mean? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But if I say this is that way, you could say, no, it's not, and now we're in an argument, right? So it just feelings, talking through that lens of feelings actually really helps the conversation be productive. But we're kind of past that. We need to get into a way in which we can hear each other and actually say all the things that we want to say. And that's where the letter works. And then the letter can be, reciprocated, right? And it doesn't, now you don't have to communicate by owl. Like this isn't Harry Potter, but you need to but you write a letter to each other. And one and done, back and forth. And then from there, it's kind of like everything's been said. We've heard each other. Now we can start to talk, right? And so it's a little bit of a reset.
It's so interesting you say that, because we've recommended that to several people. In fact, we had a husband that said, I'm getting ready to divorce my wife. She doesn't want to talk about things. We said, look, do this. Do one last thing and try this. Write a letter. That way, you're not getting in an argument. You're not pointing fingers. It lets her read it and read it over and over and digest it. And he came back like 3 weeks later and he's like, we have never been happier in our marriage the past couple of weeks after doing that, because it worked. And so I love that you're saying that, because we also believe that can,
that's awesome,
be a game changer.
Yep.
So that's a big thing. I think also one of the things that I was thinking about while you guys were talking was there's this idea of evolution. Okay. So like menopause is an evolution. It's a natural evolution, right? It feels kind of, but to men, it feels like a revolution. It feels, going back to that, right? Difference where it feels like it, and to her it does too, right? Because there's a lot of this just sort of came out of nowhere. And some of this stuff hits over time. And some of it really is like, there was this day and then there was that day. I used to sleep and now I don't, right? Like that, it can come on that fast. But there isn't really a lot in a man's life that happens naturally that can allow us to relate to that. Mm-hmm. And the challenge that I think men really have is there's three. So first one is, just to follow up on what I was saying, they can't relate to it, so they start to believe that it doesn't exist, or that it's not real, or that it must be an excuse, or she's making it all up in her head. Like that comes from, I think, not just the lack of education, but the lack of relatability. They just can't wrap their heads around it. So then they just.
I know I was there a little bit.
Yep. So that is definitely one. Another one is, I think, and I noticed this when I started talking about symptoms, when I started talking about things like hot flashes, frozen shoulder, dry vagina, to a lot of men, I started to notice in comments and DMs, it was kind of like I was talking about feminine hygiene, okay, or beauty products. It's just like it felt like to them, oh, that's just stuff I don't need to know.
Mhm.
And then I started to realize, I'm like, oh, the problem isn't that you don't understand menopause. The problem is that you think it's okay not to. That's your problem. Like you think you don't need to be a part of this, right? Like menopause optional marriage type of thing, right? And when men start to understand this was always part of the plan for her, right? She wasn't prepared either. Like you weren't, she wasn't, neither of you were, but this was always part of her life plan. She doesn't get to escape this. It's 100% of women go through some version of this, right? And so the idea that men have just decided, well, on this one, I'm going to bow out. Let me know when it's over. And that's part of the
At
problem.
the
And you
hotel, I'm
can,
telling you.
yeah, right.
So,
Well, and think about, and I don't, I want to be careful with this analogy because I don't want to make this sound like menopause is a disease or menopause is on par with terrible, afflictions like cancer. But I have to use this example because it really strikes me. I know two men. I know two men whose wives recently were diagnosed with cancer. Both of these men became experts on cancer within a week. They're reading books. They're staying up all night reading research papers. They're going with her to her doctor. They're asking her doctor questions. Well, have you thought about this, or have you looked into that? They're doing follow-ups. They're talking with her every single day. What is it that you need? How can I make you, feel more comfortable? And they're talking about it together, and they're figuring out how to go through it together. And it's this. They've become, both in both cases. It's strengthened their partnership. They're there in it with each other, and each one of these men put like 100 hours into learning about each of their wife's specific scenarios. And the reason why I bring that up is it just sort of struck me. And again, not to make that kind of comparison, but in the actions of the man is the comparison I'm trying to make, which is something has happened to your wife and it's nothing that either of you expected. And now she's hurting, and now she needs, she needs your support. And it's physical and it's mental, and she's not, getting answers that she needs, and it's scary and it's uncertain. You know, why wouldn't you spend that kind of time trying to understand what this is also? Right? When it can be so devastating to her life, menopause, physically and mentally. Why wouldn't you, as a man, also want to put that same type of dedication and understanding into this? You know, it just, to me, there's something about this sense that men get to skip this that I think needs to get undone, right? And that's the type of thing where it's, talking to men like, hey, you need to understand this needs to be a part of your life as well, right? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is there's this sense of like she's evolving, but you're not. Right? Like you're staying here and she's moving through this phase, but she's sort of leaving you behind. And the evolving that a man has to make in this is, I guess the way I would say it is, it feels like everything that a man needs to be able to support his wife through menopause almost directly contradicts how he values himself as a man. So men don't like to be attacked. Okay. They're going to defend themselves. That goes back 50,000 years. Well, if she attacks, I'm using air quotes for people who are not listening or who are listening, if she attacks in a mood swing, right? That feels like a personal attack to men, and their natural instinct is to fight back. Their natural instinct is to defend themselves or to attack back, right? It's their natural instinct isn't to be compassionate or to be patient, right? Or to be vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
or to say, hey, I'm scared. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on, but I want to go through this with you. I don't want to lose you. Like those types of things, those aren't the natural tendencies. When you brought this up earlier, Nick, when, loss of libido happens, men start to think, well, maybe she's seen somebody else. Maybe she doesn't love me. Maybe she doesn't find me attractive. That's because the natural tendencies that men have is if they don't have the answers, they fill in those knowledge gaps with their own assumptions. That's true everywhere. Like, it's not just this. That's just the thing that men do, right? Because men like to have the answers. So they're going to fill these gaps in. And the answers that they fill in, or the assumptions that they fill in, aren't going to be like, well, I bet she's probably losing estrogen and testosterone, and I'm guessing the progesterone is really affected. Like, that's not where their heads are going, right? And so everything about this really kind of contradicts. So this ladders all the way back to the beginning, where I started talking about in my own journey this idea of behavior. Okay, so this is what needs to change is like the behavior of men, the behavior for me, my natural instincts or tendencies, or how I see things or how I react to things, right? How I interpret things, how vulnerable I'm willing to be, whether I default to compassion and patience or whether I default to being argumentative and defensive. Those things were learned behaviors. I personally learned those through a lot of therapy. I'm hoping I can help some men learn those through, our conversations. It's faster and cheaper, but but that's what we really are talking about here. Like, that's what men are struggling with. They're struggling with the fact that what they need to be successful right now is directly opposes the things that they thought made them who they are. That's, I guess, my thought.
Yeah, what hit me hard earlier in the podcast is when you said you are interpreting things for people. And I really think that's very powerful and true. Let's pretend you're speaking a different language to me, right? What am I going to do? I'm going to just shake my head, smile. I'm going to start just wandering and be like, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't care what he's talking about. I don't understand what he's talking about, right? Because I don't know the language you're speaking. But if I start understanding the language that you're speaking, then I'm probably going to be much more engaged and want to understand. And, so I really appreciated you saying that someone said that you were the interpreter. Is that what you said?
The interpreter, yeah. Menopause interpreter,
right?
yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense because most men, you're speaking a language we don't understand. So you start talking about menopause and immediately we're like, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't really want to know what he's talking about. Like that just because it's not our language. But if you interpret it to me, what that language is, then that makes a lot of sense to me. So
I loved your analogy that you talked about, like their wives got a really bad disease and they jumped all in. We said an analogy similar a couple episodes ago with a therapist that we have on Fridays. And he's like, isn't it interesting when our kids get really hurt, we drive straight to the ER and get them fixed, right? We're going to take care of them super fast. But we said, isn't it funny how our marriage is like major needs attention, major train wreck, everything's going horrible. Here comes divorce or separation or whatever. We don't drive ourselves straight to the ER to fix it. Sometimes we just keep fighting or keep letting that distance get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Like,
Yep.
We've got to start pouring into our marriages for each other and for our kids. And like everything you're describing could be the biggest train wreck in marriage history, right? Like this gap that's already there is now just being blown crazy. And so I love that you, like, husbands, just try to learn and get knowledgeable and ask your wife what she's going for and just try to. Nick's amazing. Like, he recognized, and I'm taking my own advice a couple years ago. I said, I have to start communicating and I have to start telling him what I need. And all of a sudden I was like, I can't do dinner every night, which I had done our entire marriage. I can't go grocery shopping all the time. It's a lot. I'm feeling anxious. I have a lot on my plate. I can't handle what I used to. Like, all these things, I started communicating with him. He stepped it up like he never has. Like, he might not understand this whole perimenopause and like what I'm going through like inside my body, But when I explained to him, like, I would love it if you do this, I would love it if you do this. Like, it means so much to me when the teamwork's there and when you take the kids, like, just running one of our daughters somewhere so I don't have to be thinking about that. Like, he's seen a difference in our marriage just from him stepping it up, which he didn't have to do until a few years ago. Like, technically, I was able
Yeah.
to handle everything. So I think husbands, if you could just realize that we don't want to be going through this either and just ask her what she needs. Like we always talk in our podcast, like if you could just ask your wife and your husband, both of you, it goes both ways, what can I do to love you better today? And then be honest and then care about that answer, marriages would change. And I think that's in this stage of life, like that question is so important. So important.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think what we both, in both of our channels, are doing is we're just taking our own experiences and the things that we're learning and the things that, we're diving into, right? You guys are really focused and you've learned a ton about intimacy and connection and what works, but you're also sharing what's working for you, literally you too, right? And I'm doing the same thing. And I think what we're both showing everybody out there who's listening is you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a psychiatrist or a therapist. You don't have to in order to understand some of these things on a really meaningful level. And there are ways in which you can understand a lot of this stuff without having to understand it, that deeply. And you can make a huge difference in your relationship, by doing it. And that's the thing that I just want husbands to understand about, intimacy in particular through the lens of what's going on with her in perimenopause is you don't have to be an expert. I wasn't. I'm not. I'm a husband just like you, right? I just decided I can see where this is going. I can see the chasm that it's creating. I don't like this. I don't like the way this feels. I know that she doesn't either. So why not learn just enough to want to be able to understand it so that we can talk about it. Right? That's kind of it. That's kind of it. And if you want to learn more than that, cool. Right? But you don't have to. If you can learn just enough to open up the conversation that becomes the next conversation and the one after that, you're done. You've learned enough because the conversations you have onward and onward from there become the things that you really need. But the education was what allowed you to have the conversation because the education was what stripped away the assumptions or the judgment or the blame. And once you've gotten that, then the two of you can just carry on, right? You just needed some catalyst to allow that to happen. And that's what I think both of us talk about, right? In different forms.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Husbands, if you could just look at your wife and say, what are you struggling with right now? And she's like, I'm not sleeping good. Then, hey, I'll take the kids for a couple hours. You take a nap, or you go to bed early tonight. I'll get the kids to bed. I'm really struggling with anxiety right now. Well, can I go to the doctors with you? Can we find you some herbs, some medication? What can I do to help you in that area? What mental load are you carrying that's stressing you out right now? Hey, well, I don't know that I can take care of dinner the next couple nights. I have this, and this going on. Hey, I'll take care of that. Those are the kind of conversations that change marriage, and they're not hard. They're just marriage changing, and it's called teamwork. Like it doesn't,
Yeah, and
I mean, this really doesn't have to wreck marriages. We've been going through this for a few years. I tell them, I'm like, please don't take the fact that I don't want to make love all the time like I used to. And of course, men are gonna miss that. We miss our old selves. They miss our old selves. But this stage, like I've got so many friends out of the stage, and I'm like, it comes back. You're gonna be fine. Like this doesn't have to like. This isn't the rest of our life, right? So
totally.
the whole point is like we can make this through this together. I still love you. If I reject you, it's not because I don't love you. It's just I'm going through stuff. Please try to be patient and understand me. Those kind of conversations. We got this. We got this.
Yep. 100%. I mean, this and exactly what you just said is such an important point, which is I think that you can actually look at menopause, in the context of life as one of the greatest opportunities to strengthen your relationship. Or it's one of the best chances you're going to have to tear it apart. Yeah. It's kind of one of the two, right? Or option 3 is you just become roommates, and neither one of those things. And so but the two extremes or the ends of it are it's either divorce or you could become, a stronger couple than you ever thought that you ever could be. And because it can take things like this to strengthen that relate if you allow it, right? If you're willing to learn a little bit about it, if you're willing to allow this and the strength in the relationship doesn't just come from the relationship itself. It becomes, from my perspective, and from the husband's perspective, it comes from really like that sense of, oh, I still have room to evolve as a man, just as a person, as an individual. I still have room to change and to grow and to learn new ways and new perspectives and new things. And it feels good. It feels good to not be the dude who you were when you were 25, when you're 50. It feels good. You know what I mean? Like it just like you should probably try not to necessarily like you feel that way. That's cool. But it feels good to be like, gosh, I'm able to just really open up. I'm able to be emotional. I'm able to be vulnerable. I had to spend most of my life not being those things. And now I know, and now I can. And it's nice. Like give into some of that. Give it a try. You'd be surprised, and doing that can be the thing that makes your marriage something that you never even knew it could be.
And ladies, don't suffer in silence. Like there are doctors and medical experts. There are some good experts out there. I know a lot of doctors aren't big into this and don't understand women, but there are some that do, and there are some hormone replacements that I've heard are amazing. I'm more like I don't love to take medicine, so I'm more natural. There's a lot of natural herbs if you're more like me, and just there's things that can help you. Like if you have anxiety, if you have depression, I have lots of friends that have come out and said the depression's just killing me and have gotten on certain herbs and it's really, really helped them. Like the pain, like we sell the lubricant, we have the marriage aid that we always sell because that has saved our intimate life the last few years. Like there are things out there that can help you so you don't have to suffer. Because I don't want women thinking like, oh, this just my next 10 years of my life is just this is horrible. There are things that can help. So don't give up. Hope husbands, help her out, help her find those tools, be supportive.
Well, and I think you just hit it right. Spot on. Instead of looking at it and saying, this is just something I'm going to have to go through for X amount of years and we're just going to have to deal with it. No, talk about it and try to work together on how you can make things better, even though it's maybe not going to be exactly where you both want it. But
Right.
as you're communicating and looking for ways that you can help each other and serve each other and get through this difficult season, so to speak. Like you said, Jesse, can bring you closer together in the long term.
And you said there were two options or three options, like roommate, divorce, or you choose to strengthen your marriage. If you love your kids, choose to strengthen your marriage for your kids and for each
100%.
other. Everybody. Choose to strengthen your marriage. That is a choice. That is a choice that you get to make.
That's a great way to put it. And choice is important because husbands have to understand that she doesn't have one and you do.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a good way to end it.
Well, I did my best to not talk too much on this podcast and just take in the
Nick's listening because he's
this is a great podcast. I want to be a better man. I want to be a better husband. I mean, that's why
you're doing great.
So I mean, we're in like episode like 460 or 470 of podcasts, and I'm always learning, and I always love learning, and I probably till the day I die, whether it's 80 or 90, I'll continue to try to keep being a better husband, and
that'll be everyone. We're all on a learning. This is just learning.
That's awesome.
Well, we really appreciate coming on. Let our audience know where they can find you, Jesse, where they can watch your videos, learn more about this.
Good stuff.
Yeah, you have amazing stuff.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Husbands for Menopause, the number 4 in the middle, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, the whole thing.
You're awesome. Thank you for trying to save marriages. You're doing a great job.
Well, you as well.
Different areas. There's lots of different areas of marriage.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. It was great to see you guys.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you again. And to all of you out there listening, as we all say, we hope you find ultimate intimacy in your relationship.